Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jon Schweppe. Many of you may know me as an opponent, typically, in these types of debates, and I do appreciate Mac and the Lexington Institute taking the risk of bringing me here as something of an umsbudsman. But I come not to bury you guys. I actually come to join you. On this, I think AI is very important. I'm a populist, I'm a conservative, and I'm an AI optimist. Now, I do think we have to be realistic about the politics, and that's something that was talked about here today. I think some of the messages that were in these speeches were very good. Shannon with AWS, I thought, did a great job talking about the positives that can come from building these data centers, from taking care of them, dealing with some of the concerns that people have. But we do have to recognize that AI has a serious image problem. And that's in part self-inflicted, right? We've had folks like Sam Altman and Dario and Elon to a degree, saying things like, we're going to get rid of all of the jobs. It's going to be half of the jobs out of the workforce are gone, and it's just going to be the way it is. We'll have UBI or something. People naturally, voters, conservative voters, liberal voters, hear that and get nervous and don't like it. And so I think that's fueled a lot of what we've seen in the opposition to data centers, the opposition to AI expansion. And so I think what's important is recognizing that we have to work together to address that image problem, not just AI maximalists, not just libertarians, not just corporate interests and stakeholders, but also the Trump administration, populists, Republican voters, Republican lawmakers. On Message had a poll a few months ago that said 81% of voters support guardrails over AI, which if you ask a question like that, of course people are going to say they want some guardrails, but I do think that's important because our messaging has to reflect that reality. And I think, personally, the president and the administration did a great job at addressing what those guardrails might be when they released their federal framework on AI. And I'll get to that in a second. The other thing I just wanted to touch on is that as we're going forward messaging on this issue, it's really important that we're making a positive vision for the good. So when we're talking about AI, we need to be talking more about, creating a future that's like the Jetsons and less about how it's going to just decimate the workforce and where people just aren't going to know what the meaning in their lives is going to be anymore. And I think we're moving in a good direction on that. But I think, ultimately to address some of these concerns, this is a political issue now, unfortunately, but it is. We need to address the concerns. And I think part of the solution is to follow the White House model on the federal framework. There were 7 points in the model. I'm just going to go through each of them one by one. Number one was protecting kids online. And this has been something, if you're in the tech policy space, it's been an ongoing debate for years. A lot of the libertarian, more tech-aligned folks have argued against all regulation in this space for a long time. I think for us to win this fight, we're going to have to make a compromise here. We're going to have to agree on some common sense regulations to protect kids. From our perspective at American Principles Project, that's age verification. Protecting kids from obscene content online should be a no-brainer. Most of the tech companies in this room already are going to great lengths to do that. I think it's something, we have 27 states that have passed legislation to that degree. I think we should be moving forward on that. The other option, which I really like, and it's being talked about in Congress right now, is the App Store Accountability Act. And this is a bill that would basically recognize, Apple and Google have a duopoly on app stores. It's a great point to empower parents and to put regulation there rather than trying to do age verification on every single website or every single app out there. And I think that's a really good framework to move forward with. Second is safeguarding our communities, and that's typically talking about the concerns over the data centers. And as you guys know, we're dealing with a lot of misinformation out there about water, about electricity. We were talking about Loudoun County earlier. I'm in Loudoun County. I do appreciate the lower property tax rates. And so I think it's going to be really important in our messaging going forward that we are addressing those problems at the get-go. Water, for example, this is something I had to look into this because I was seeing people hysterical about this online, and I couldn't believe it. It's like, what's happening to all this water? I didn't even know, for example, that the tech companies are using potable water, that they're basically reusing wastewater and the stuff that we can't drink anymore. I think that's really important to get that out there. And again, I'll just point out Shannon with AWS, great messaging on that, because I think it's important. If folks know that, they'll be less concerned. They just want to know that the water's going back into the water cycle, that we're not going to have a situation where we're having brownouts on drinking water and the data centers are going to continue to get fed the water. Third is respecting intellectual property rights. I know this is a very wonkish, difficult issue. I won't get deep into it, but I do think that that's something, folks are concerned about how the models are training and to what degree that they're infringing on intellectual property. And so that's something we have to address, I think, federally. Fourth, preventing censorship and protecting free speech. This is something that conservatives especially are really worried about because we dealt with this just a few years ago on social media censorship. And it's going to be important to make sure that viewpoint discrimination is not a systemic issue within the AI models. Fifth, enabling innovation and ensuring AI dominance for America. I fully believe in this. I mean, we can see a future where if we restrict AI too much and China gets ahead in the race, where American corporations are using Chinese AI and giving all of our data to the Chinese and all sorts of different problems. So I do think that's really important. I will just warn, I think that talking point may be a little overwrought. We've been using it for about a year now. We used it to really try to push, I was in the administration then, but to push the moratorium. And I'm not sure it's that effective. And so I would consider really trying to address where some of voters are at on that issue. Sixth, developing an AI-ready workforce. This is something the First Lady has led on. Again, I don't think there's really a good case that AI is going to decimate the workforce. I think, I mentioned the Jetsons earlier, but I think there's going to be a lot of jobs that we can't even picture yet that are going to be because of the AI economy in 10 years. We have to look at this the way previous technological revolutions in this country have functioned. That being said, I do think it's important that we give voters confidence that this is something where they're going to be able to have a career in a post-AI world. And then seventh, and I think this is important, the moratorium was very controversial last year when the Senate tried to pass it, and I know 99 senators voted against it. But the reality is, if you have a patchwork, 50 states choosing how to regulate these companies, actually what it does is it helps incumbents, right? It makes it really hard to be a startup. It makes it really hard to have competition in the marketplace. And so if we care about that, which I certainly do as a populist, I think it's going to be really important that we do have a federal framework going forward. And so I'll just close with this. Again, 81% of the public support guardrails on AI. I think, you're starting to see tech companies and tech interest groups understand that we're going to have to do something, but it's going to be a really important selling point. If we're going to win the AI race, if we're going to sell this to the American people and get them excited about where the AI economy can take us, we have to address their concerns on protecting kids online, on safeguarding their communities, and that sort of thing. So thank you so much.